And it's time now for a motion to adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome to Motion to Adjourn. Both of us are in the house again.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row, boy. What's happening here, boy?
That's right.
I don't know.
The weather looks pretty good for now.
No wonder your afro is all frizzy.
See that because of this. I blame it on the humidity, but I don't think that's what the real reason is.
Electricity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, electricity. What's up, brother? Doing good afternoon to the people of Bermuda. What's up, Jermaine?
I'm good, man. How's everybody?
Was sad, you know.
Say it?
Sad.
He's sad.
Oh, man.
Sad. You know,
What happened now?
Boris is going.
Oh, boy.
Uncle Boris is going.
You know, it's going to be a big party when he finally goes.
I knew. I was about to say.
It's going to be a big party. Big celebration.
What you doing on Boris being going there, brother? Doing?
Well, I don't follow that boy because his haircut, we're in competition.
Yeah, humidity is definitely troubling his kid.
Yeah, sure. Well, he's got let off so many times, but he parties a lot during the COVID, and he does this and that, and they let him slide, and so many things, man. So finally, when the guy started to resign, it's like, you know what? My team is leaving me, man. It's about time I follow suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they squeezed him.
Squeeze him out now.
Yeah, one guy said, it's not the rats leaving the ship, it's the ship leaving the rats. yeah. I mean, because what's your thoughts, man?
I say it's about time. I mean, I felt embarrassed for them, you know, having him as a leader and how he was just embarrassment and scandal after scandal after scandal and being forgiven by his party, you know, over and over and over. And now they're all, oh, Boris this, but you need to leave me to resign. Where were you 3 years ago? He walked into a crook.
and left the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was inevitable, right? Because every time you think, okay, you know, it's like a cat has 9 life, right? You say, okay, well, his one is 8th life already. So this is it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So from last year, I thought he was going to be going when the whole Partygate thing started coming out. And he scared through that. Then something else came out. He scared through that. Then he had this vote of no confidence. He said, okay, well, it's finally going on. They got enough people willing to get rid of him. And 60% of their caucus sided with him.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, we have complete faith in the Prime Minister and his did this for Ukraine, his fixed Brexit, his this, all this stuff, right? And last week, this latest scandal comes out, and he says, "No, I didn't know anything about it." Right? Come to find out, you didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Left a crook. That's all I can say.
But the thing is, he has a lot of his ministers going out every day on British media saying that he's not lying and what he's doing is the truth, and then they try to pivot to talk about the war in Ukraine, what they're going to do for the cost of living, and they made themselves look like complete fools.
Yeah, bro.
So I think yesterday it got to the point was like he's run out of people who's willing to make themselves look like complete fools at this point. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. What's
today's topic, to me?
Well, today we're going to be talking about our own cost of living. So I know this has been a hot button in Bermuda for, I think, before my time, after, it probably will be after me as well. So we're going to have Mr. Cordell Riley on, and we're going to discuss, you know, the various facets of the cost of living and hopefully get some insight onto the livable wage.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's the thing, right? Bermuda, Don, you probably didn't remember, Jermaine, right? But when we were younger, Don, right? People always were flying away to America to buy stuff. Why?
It's cheaper.
Cheaper.
Right. You remember people used to be coming back. You had those trips. You go up in the morning. You could come back in the night.
Duffel bags full.
Bring me some McDonald's.
What color bags they was coming back with?
I can't remember. They call
pink Conway bags. Remember them?
Oh, okay. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Shopping bags. Yes.
Right. Because they were going to buy basic necessities because things were too expensive in Bermuda, right?
The Nancy Street was hot.
Right. 14th Street, all that. Bermudians there's always been a cost issue in Bermuda because of the logistics. We have to ship everything in. We have to fly everything in. So immediately that ups the ante on the cost. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm simply saying these are the reality. Unless we have a bridge from here to New York, we always got to fly stuff in. Ships are always got to come in. But anyway, as the world has experienced as of late, the costs have gone up sharply. You know, it used to be a little how would you say, like a hill or incline before. Now it's like a Gibbsy or Lighthouse incline, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that it's shot right up. And one of the things that costs have shot up, but people's wages have stayed the same. So anyway, we are going to be lucky to have one of the top statisticians in the country, Mr. Cordell Riley, who's going to be calling in a few. And, you know, as with last week, hey, our opinion don't matter. It's better to just deal with the facts. Because one thing that affects everybody, no matter who's your cup match team, is the cost of living.
Right. Now, obviously, there is a need for us to also discuss the possibilities of government assisting during these times, right?
The same government you say needs to cut the cost?
Well, I mean, I said they need to be.
That same government?
I said they need to be fiscally responsible. Doesn't mean that they have to cut the cost. It just means that they have to be responsible. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, when you look around, if you see a government that is a bit more financially sturdy, they can give out certain support to the people during these times, especially in more isolated locations where they know the cost of living is bound to skyrocket due to importation.
Okay. You mean like the duty-free stuff that the government's doing already?
Duty-free? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, yeah. That's a good start.
Okay, because, you know, under a previous government, there was no duty-free on certain items.
Right.
Okay, just want to be clear.
I just know that some people's grocery carts weren't as high either.
Yeah, so I mean, but anyway, we'll get into this later on, maybe not later on, but we'll let the professionals speak.
Ooh. All right. You with us, Mr. Riley?
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Motion to Adjourn.
Oh, good afternoon. I didn't realize I was on the air. Good afternoon.
Yeah, just thought I would check with you just to make sure. Feel free to just tell the listening audience a bit about yourself. I know everybody knows you, but
I don't know about that. But I will elaborate on the statistical part so that people see where I'm coming from. So yeah, I was in the Department of Statistics for, I believe, 6 years. I was the research statistician, having obtained a certificate in survey sampling from the University of Michigan. And so primarily that role was to prepare the government for census and other surveys. But while I was there, one gets trained in various other aspects in statistics. So I had full responsibility for the retail sales index, and I was also cross-trained with the consumer price index, which is the topic of today. So that's a little bit of background myself in terms of my experience with the consumer price index.
Thank you for that. And obviously, as you know, both of us who host this show, we look to, educate the people. But we know that cost of living is a highly politically polarized topic. So we're really going to be asking you to kind of cut through that or the political point and really hit people with the facts and the background of the mechanical and technical parts of it. So without further ado, what drives the cost of living in Bermuda?
Okay, well, let's start off with how do you measure the cost of living, right? So the cost of living is usually predicated on a basket of goods and services. So every 5 or 7 or 10 years, the government goes out into the field, and in Bermuda's case, they go out for 2 weeks, visit a household, and each member of that household has to record all of their purchases for those 2 weeks. And so you have an interviewer who goes out there, who checks things. They make several calls during that period, and they record all the information in terms of their spending habits as well as their income. And so they do that for a number of households. I'm not quite sure of the sample size, perhaps maybe 700 or so. And so once that information is obtained, then you look at the combined spending habits of those households, and from there you establish the basket of goods. But beyond that, you also are establishing the weights, and this is the critical thing here. How much do you apply to the critical things that they spend? So, for instance, the biggest cost in Bermuda is housing. And so rents are included, but not mortgages, because unless you have a variable mortgage, that doesn't change. So if you go to the bank and you get a fixed mortgage, you pay a certain amount every month for the life of that mortgage. So there's going to be no variation in the cost of your mortgage. So they generally use rents, which there is variation. And so in Bermuda, housing costs are the largest cost in the basket of goods. And then you would have, from the most recent survey, which is done in 2013, you would have the next item, which is the largest weight, is education and recreation. So, for instance, the actual weighting, it's usually out of 100. And so the rate for rent was 27%. So that's weighted on that. That's the largest one. So then recreation and education, that's 15%. And then you get down, food is at 12%, and so on and so forth. And they all add up to 100. And so that's primarily why you conduct a household expenditure survey, so you can establish not only what they buy, but in the volume that they buy it.
Thank you for that. And moving into some of the measures that have been put in place to try and mitigate that, we have seen the government freeze the cost of gas rising. So I know that this has also been something that's been hotly debated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in terms of the weighting of that, that's 4%. But so, in other words, we don't spend a whole lot on gas, so to speak. So I know people say, I spend $200 a month on gas, et cetera, et cetera. But in the scheme of one's purchases, that is down on the lower scale. But that will impact people, because that's something that they readily see. So if they're normally spending, say, $200 a month, and all of a sudden they're paying $180, they're going to see that right away. So that's a visual impact. But in terms of moving or adjusting for the rate of inflation, it's not going to move the needle that much.
Okay. And alongside that, just to give people a bit of a broad overview, what do you, as someone who's an expert, see the main contributing factors to the cost of living rising as of right now?
Well, right now, clearly it's the food. The cost of I heard the preamble of your discussion before I switched it off, so I won't get interference. But it's the shipping cost. The shipping cost to bring things here. We've seen that, but we knew perhaps a year ago, I think, that costs were going to rise because we were told that based on that ship being blocked in that I think it's Suez Canal over there in Egypt. They said that that's going to impact costs tremendously down the road. So that was one factor. And then, of course, now that was during a pandemic, and then now during a war, which produces wheat, et cetera, from those areas, as well as oil and gas. All of that's impacting on us and the rest of the world. And so it's really a perfect storm. So costs associated with food and, of course, importation, those costs are going up. And we've seen, like, from the latest impact, some of the meat costs are going up by about 30%. And then, so we're actually seeing those increases. Now, I mentioned earlier about rents. And there's always discussion about whether the 2.5% is, in fact, the correct rate of inflation. But if you talk to the Department of Statistics, the rental section hasn't moved. In fact, it's actually gone down somewhat. And of course, you saw in the newspaper this week that there was a headline, rents going up by 30%. And my initial instinct, or my initial reaction, was that's probably the high end. And of course, then I saw on this particular on your television station with I think it was Buddy Rigo saying yes, it's exactly the case. So there's high end properties which are going for $20,000 and $30,000 a month. There may be a greater demand, and they may be able to charge 30% more. But you're not talking about the $2,000 and the $3,000 a month rent. Those places are not going up by that much. And if for some reason that they're going down, and people are questioning that, well, there's also the talk that many people have left the island. Unless they were living on the beach, they had to vacate some property. So there may be some weakening there, not much, because those properties are always in demand. So it hasn't moved. Because they're the largest weight in that whole index, it's going to drive the index to a certain extent. And so if you haven't seen much movement there, the overall index, as you see it, is at 2.5%. But if they looked at individual costs of the items, and I don't know how many items are there now, but I know when I was there, it was over 1,000 items in that basket of goods. So they can look at the items individually and see how they're trending. And so that's how they know. They can tell you that meat has gone up by 30%, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, and it might require a bit of maneuvering, but we have diagnosed what's happening. But let's say my colleague here, MP, Chris Famous, and his colleagues came to you and said, look, Mr. Riley, the government's looking for things that it can do to mitigate or assist its people through the cost of living. What would be some of your recommendations, if any?
Well, again, if the largest cost in terms of food is importation, obviously, if there's some way to reduce the cost of importation, a lot of the staple items that we require either have no duty or low duty. And so the government is not extracting much from those particular items, but it's the shipping costs are beyond our control. Unless government were to have its own shipping line to be able to reduce the cost of shipping, this is something that's going to require some creativity. So if it's food costs, then we have to look at perhaps internal solutions like, what do you call that, aqua farming, I think it's called, hydroponics. You might have to look at something like that in terms of a way of reducing the importation costs, things of that nature. But as long as we have to ship things in, we're going to have to bear those costs.
Thank you. And if it's one big thing that you hear that is a common misconception that you would want to clear up today, what would that be?
Well, I think, having in preparation for this, was it 2 weeks ago, I did touch base with the Department of Statistics so that I wasn't speaking any untruths. There's concern about the true value of the rate of inflation. So ours is at 2.5%, and you might see United States was at, I think, 8%, and I don't know what the UK is, but it's certainly, I think it's maybe 5%. So obviously ours is lower. And so people are saying right away that can't be. But as I mentioned earlier, that if the biggest contributor or the biggest weight is rents, and they haven't really moved, that's going to drive the index. So if we were to see some upward movement there, we would see the index climb. The other thing that came out too, if with regards to food costs, we heard a grocer this week say that they had stockpiled items during the pandemic because the chain supply was good. So these are non-perishables. So they stocked up on these items, and so they were not surprised that the inflation had not moved much until recently with regards to the food index. So when you put those things together, the index and the index has worked well before. Now there is some discussion, and I see the Minister of Labor is now moving towards that maybe we need to have the basket of goods updated less than the 7 to 10 years, maybe as soon as 5 years. Now the United States has a revolving index. So that means every 3 months they're replacing partial of those items, and by the 15th month they've completed or done the re-rating of the entire index. So they're able to respond far quickly to the changes in prices. Now, they are the world's major economy, so obviously they would have to be able to do that. If a small economy like Bermuda were to do that, we would have to expand the department statistics, and that's going to be far more costly in order to get the level of accuracy that people want. So I think in the first instance, we would probably need to move it to probably every 5 years, and then if we can get it down to every 3 years, we should be able to keep a good check on the rate of inflation.
Well, thank you for that. And Mr. Riley, we're just going to go to a break, and we'll be right back with you, okay?
Okay, I'll hold on.
For millennia, ginger has been used around the world for the medicinal properties and its unique zingy flavor. You'll find it in ginger snaps and gingerbread. In Asia, it's liberally used in curries and other traditional savory dishes. Here in Bermuda, John Barrett & Son bring us this bold flavor with Barrett's Ginger Beer. Refreshing, spicy, and quintessentially Bermudian. This month, well-timed for the heat of summer, we're featuring Barrett's Ginger Beer Diet and Original, canned and bottled. Lynn knows. Why go anyplace else?
You're locked to Power 95, Bermuda's big station, at 94.9 FM, a Bermuda Broadcasting Company station.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gray Miners with Bermuda Broadcasting News with your top stories to the hour, brought to you by Butterfield.
Take control of your Butterfield credit card by downloading the Butterfield Card Alerts app. Monitor your spending activity with real-time transaction alerts sent directly to your mobile device. And if your card is lost or stolen, use the app to turn the card off, preventing any further transactions from being processed. Download the app from the Apple Store or Google Play Store today. Customized credit card controls. This is banking by Butterfield. The Bank of N.T. Butterfield & Son Limited is licensed to conduct banking business by the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has resigned. That headline breaking news worldwide as the former leader succumbed to pressure from within his party, blaming it on the herd instinct of Tory MPs pushing him out of office. Addressing members of the media outside Downing Street, he accepted that it was the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that he should no longer lead the country, but he also made clear his intention to stay on as Prime Minister until the party has picked a successor. This after his leadership and integrity were questioned following a number of scandals. A 49-year-old man was arrested last month in connection to child pornography offenses. They added, the investigation into this matter remains ongoing. And those are your top stories to the hour, brought to you by Butterfield.
Now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And we're back. We are going to, with this being a topical issue, we are going to open the lines for persons to call in if they have any questions or comments. 292-9595, because this is your opportunity to actually ask questions and get the real answers versus everybody's internet opinions. Mr. Riley, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Let me ask this question. Thank you for coming on the show. Apologies for a couple of weeks ago we had unforeseen circumstances.
No worries.
Let me ask this question. What impact do high interest rates have on our cost of living?
Well, with high interest rates, it tends to cause people to save more. So more money goes into the banks, and to borrow money, it becomes more costly. So people do not buy. So that's a way of slowing down things. So if the rate of inflation is rising, and you put up your sort of lending rates at the bank, it kind of slows things down because people you have less money circulating, basically. So inflation is all about too much money chasing too few goods. If you remove that money from the economy, then you have sort of equilibrium, if you will.
Mm. So, with the recent rise of the interest rates in America and the knock-on effect here, how does that affect Bermuda's economy?
So, for instance, I think one of the banks, I'm not sure which one, announced that they were going to raise their basis rate in line with the rise in the U.S. I don't know when it's going to take effect, but so they've announced that they're going to raise it. So obviously, you're going to have to find, if you're a mortgage holder, you're going to have to find some more money to pay that, which means the money that you would have used for something else now goes there. So it's effectively taking money out of circulation. So that's the impact that it has. So it's another way of slowing things down, especially if you're strapped for money and your mortgage is going up now. You're going to say, okay, right now, how do I offset that? Do I go out last? So you start to do those kinds of things. So you maintain your basics, but maybe some of the luxury things that you might do, you will cut back on because you have to pay your mortgage.
Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a bad thing because often, as you would know, there are people who have opinions versus facts, right? And they read something, somebody sent them something, and now it's the gospel truth and stuff like that. And there's this narrative, right? Let me put it this way. Let's use food as an example. That the government's charging too much duty, and that's what causing the price of food to be so expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's the sugar tax. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's the other. It's always the government's fault. In any country, but let's use Bermuda for example. Now, the fact of the matter is that the duty has been removed for quite a few items, not all, maybe staple items, and there's a move to remove duty from a few more staple items. Yet people are still seeing the cost of that staple item either stay the same or rise. How does one account for that?
Well, again, I think shipping costs weigh fairly heavily into that. And I'll give you my go-to example. One of my luxuries is this Italian sparkling water, right? Prior to, and I think that would have a low duty. I don't think it's zero, but it may be around 8% because it's not regular water, it's sparkling. So hence the term luxury. Prior to the pandemic, I used to pay $2.19 for it. During the pandemic, it went up to $2.99. So I still bought it, but it's gone up quite substantially. Now, in the grocery store, if I purchase that same item, it's $4.09. And so now I've done what a consumer will do now. I would substitute for something else because now that has priced itself out of the market. I don't think that the store has said, let me price that item up. I think because that is a bulky item, as it's caught up in the shipping cost. Now, I would question, it's almost doubled in price. It's a huge increase, right? Even though the base price of $2.19 initially was small, it's now $4 and some change, almost 100% increase, right? I think that has a lot to do with the shipping costs. Now, we do know that sometimes when these prices go up, the retailer may add on a percentage or two itself, and that's how you can get at the rate it's going. But I think largely this has to be driven by the shipping costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the thing is like a teacher steps out of the class, comes back 5 minutes later, it's like chaos, it's paint all over the place, right? And everybody, all the kids are sitting on at the seat, looking up at the sky, and the teacher's like, Dwayne, did you do it? And Dwayne says,
no.
Dawn, did you do it?
He did do it. He did do it.
Right? Everybody's saying it ain't me.
That's right.
So with the chain of things that it takes to get food, or I think we're gonna have to get somebody as a grocer coming here to explain all the different chains that it takes to get food, or supply chains. But each one of them is saying, well, the government's saying it's not us because we've lowered the duty. And shoppers are saying, supermarkets are saying, well, it ain't us because we only put on a small percentage of the cost.
Uh-huh.
And the shipping companies say, it's not us. We're just charging for the increase in fuel prices.
Uh-huh.
Right? So the question then becomes, well, okay, it's got to be somebody raise the prices, sir, because the end result is I'm now paying $4 for this bottle of water that I used to pay $2 for.
Yep.
Right? I saw something in England where just before Boris some food product that English people love went up to £5 or something, and they like had a total conniption over it, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But
the interesting thing with Bermuda is that a lot of the items you can still get, which is not the case elsewhere. So that speaks to the supply chain and the wholesalers and the grocery stores being able to get those items. So it's not like the item isn't there, but if I want it, I would just have to pay more for it.
Agreed. And I mean, I guess just to segue, because I know a lot of people want to know, how does a livable wage, fit into this equation when it comes to cost of living? Is that do you see it as a benefit to assisting people in getting through it, or do you think it will drive costs up?
Well, a livable wage is, you're going to look at all aspects of what a person needs to basically survive in the country. And so that's the lens through which you look. So you would look at having food that's nutritious. You would look at things, of course, housing, and you look at education. A lot of the things are already in the basket of goods, but there may be other things, allowances for emergencies. You might want to put that in there. And then, of course, what makes this complex, what is the unit of analysis, meaning who is that livable wage for? Is it for a one-person household? Is it for a household with 2 adults and 1 child, 2 adults and 2 children? It always comes back to what is your unit of analysis. And so I think thinking with the commission is that we would look at it as for the individual, because it becomes a little bit more complex, although you can do that exercise. But what you end up with at the end of the day is something that is perhaps aspirational in terms of what you would want employers to strive for. It's almost like if we were in the United States or some other place where blacks were in the minority, you would have it along the lines of sort of like I was going to say in terms of affirmative action, but you would have it as sort of along the lines of something that companies can look at and aspire for, but it wouldn't be cast in law. And most of the places, in fact, all of them that have a livable wage, it is not cast in stone. It's usually done by the private sector. I think I also sit on the Global Living Wage Foundation since I've been the chairman of the local group. And in that group, and it represents countries from around the world, not one of them have it mandated by the government. And in fact, Bermuda's case is unique that this initiative is by the government. In other places, it's by the NGO sector. So it's done without any legislative impact. And so we're striving on for that. But what it does, it gives people an idea once you have it in terms of what they need in terms of being able to survive. And so you have the minimum wage coming in first, and I think the minister has indicated that he's willing to bring that in before the year's out. And so that was sort of like, and we took the attitude with that was the ceiling. I'm sorry, that was the floor, the wage floor, that you cannot pay below that, and whilst we work on the living wage, knowing that that figure is going to be somewhat higher. But in most countries, they in fact, we were advised by one of the world experts that we should try to keep those figures close, because what the other countries are having difficulty with is coming in at a very low minimum wage, and the livable wage is rather realistic, and then they're spending a lot of time trying to close that gap.
Okay, and just because recently, obviously, when we mentioned headlines, as you know, recently people were, I'm not going to say any names, but basically saying that it was being sidestepped or that it was being delayed. As someone who is directly involved, I wanted to give you an opportunity to, let the people know what is what.
Well, as you know, there's the political side and there's the factual side. And when people make their comments in the press, they don't often speak to those in the know, because they're not intending to pass on factual information. They have their own agenda. But what I can say from our perspective is this: that the terms of reference stated that within the first year we would bring recommendations for living wage, and in the second year, which would have been March 31st of this year, we were to bring in a recommendation for minimum wage first and then living wage. What happened was that when we put out the RFP and we were trying to stick to the guidelines mentioned by government for the second year, when we put that out, all of the vendors, I shouldn't say, the three that responded to us stated that there's no way we can do it in that time frame. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. We had to go back to government to seek permission to extend it. And the minister basically said that, you can set your own agenda. So therefore, we went back to the field. We have now identified a possible vendor to do this. And if all things work out, we should be able to have the report later this year. So it is late. And so that's the factual part. If one wants to characterize that as the government dragging its feet, that's up to them. But I've just given you the facts.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, thank you. Let me ask you this, sir, Mr. Riley, while we've got you real for the next 5 minutes. How is a country's GDP? What is a GDP, and how is a country's GDP calculated?
Okay, now you're moving to more the economic statistician, but the GDP is the value of all goods and services within your country. So if you were to add up all your goods and services in your country, that constitutes the gross domestic product. And I think ours is around about the $6 billion mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Because I ask this because, again, people, put things for political purposes one way or the other. People put things out there in the atmosphere, like, not like in at old time church, they say, "Oh Lord Jesus, just put it in the atmosphere, and it will come true."
That's what they said.
You never went to old time Pentecostal church?
Yes.
So it's almost as if people like to put things out in the atmosphere, and it's suddenly all these pixie dust where things are now going to become true because, hey, it was on the internet, right? And I saw a gentleman put out a graph recently, and it says, the GDP has dropped from, let's say, 2004. The GDP was close to $8 billion, and now it's only at $6 billion. And the present government's ruining the economy, blah blah blah, right? And again, people just take it at face value that something went from 8 to 6. And not even knowing what are all the mitigating factors why these things are. How did it get to 8 to begin with? You're not speaking that it got up to 8 to begin with under the same government, right? But anyway, that's ventured into the politics. But my point is that people see things, see a number, but every number has a contributing factor why that number is, right?
Absolutely. So when you look at it, see from a statistical point of view, if we see something going way up or going way down. So for instance, when I had responsibility for the retail sales index, and that's we get reports directly from retailers in terms of what the sales volume was and the value of the sales volume. If we see that this item or from this retailer it jumped by more than 10%, we would actually call that retailer up and say, what's going on there? We see that, this huge increase. And they would tell you, oh, this is what happened. And so when you see the commentary in the retail sales, the consumer price index, that's where we're getting that information from, so that we can be factual. Because obviously, on the front end, we don't actually know what is actually going on until we talk to those that are on the front lines. So they will tell us, well, this is what's happening, or that's what's happening. That's the reason why that's the case. And so we can give some explanation as to why the index is going up or why it's going down. So with regards to GDP, clearly, if that's a measure of your economic activity, and you've had 2 years where economic activity has been depressed, then your value of your goods and services will have fallen. Mm-hmm. And it's as straightforward as that.
Well, sounds like we're going to have you back at another time to talk on some other issues, because part of this, tell them, Jim, tell them what the mission of this show is, Dwayne.
Oh, we come to inform the people. I mean, we represent both sides of the political aisle. So it's good for us to show the people that, we value the opinion of experts, and so should you. So it's like, that has always been the goal of the show, is to show not only bipartisanship, but also to bring information to the fore.
What's bipartisanship? What that means?
Yeah, you gotta know what it means. So thank you for that, Mr. Riley. We really appreciate you taking your time out.
We have a WhatsApp. Before we go to break, we have a message came in on WhatsApp that say a big factor in local costs is whether the goods are shipped from North America or Europe. European shipping costs have skyrocketed since COVID. Therefore, the cost of goods shipped from Europe have been are higher than average cost increases. What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Riley, before we go to break?
Well, I mean, it's probably correct. I mean, it's a far longer distance. So that's probably correct. So the person who put that in there obviously knows what they're talking about. But if you just asked me off the top of my head, I said, well, there's a longer distance, it's going to cost more. But having said that, I've seen a lot of items coming from like Sainsbury's and it used to be Tesco's, but I don't think we get those products anymore. But certainly Sainsbury's products from one of the larger chains in the UK on the shelves of one of our stores, and they seem to be compared to the North American goods at a much more competitive price. So they clearly have a lower base point if they're being able to be sold competitively once they arrive here, if you even include those higher shipping costs. So maybe that's part of the solution there. I think Dwayne asked me earlier about wondering if that's the case, if you're getting goods and services from Europe that even with the shipping costs, you're able to sell them at a competitive price, maybe that's an option there.
And would you say that, the crashing down becomes, if a lot of these, we're going to go to break in a minute, but if a lot of these prices have gone up because the price of fuel is going up, if by chance the war ends and fuel prices go back down to what could be relatively normal, let's say $50 a barrel, should we expect to see these costs go down?
I think the word should be, and I think we should, but they may not necessarily go down to the lowest levels, because if the market has been able to bear it, there may be some incentive to keep them, if not at the levels that they were, not too far from there. But one would hope that they would go down.
Okay. Well, we'll go to break and then we come back and wrap it up.
The family farmers who own Welch's insist on making 100% grape juice with no added sugar, colors, or flavors. At harvest time, they pick Concord and Niagara grapes at the peak of their flavor and deliver them within hours to be fresh pressed into delicious Welch's 100% grape juice. Rich in antioxidants, our grape juice adds bold flavor and a nutritional boost to your diet. Visit Welch's.com for healthy recipes.
Now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome back to Motion to Adjourn. Mr. Riley, you still with us?
I am still with you.
Okay. So, I don't know if you're waiting for...
Somebody may call in.
Okay, well, if not.
Yeah, but this person just sent a message. I would encourage them to call in. The thing is, cost of living is there's no way to escape cost of living. The other day, there was a post put up about ways to cut your electricity costs, right?
Yeah.
And somebody put on there, a reply was, oh, it costs money to put in the things that's on that list. In other words, like LED bulb or a different appliance, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is this, sir. We are not going to change us grumbling on Facebook or calling up radio show. It's not going to change the price of rice or the price of oil.
Yeah.
We ourselves have to control what we spend. Like the brother said, he chose not to buy that bottle of water. Good afternoon, caller. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Good evening to you, Brother Chris, and everybody else that's there. Dwayne and Don and Mr. Riley. Quick question for Mr. Riley is, what is his thoughts about Bermuda potentially looking for other sources of food supply? Because typically we buy things from North America, and obviously there is food available from other sources. Would that have a market impact on pricing if Bermuda generally found a different source of their foodstuffs?
Yes, and I recognize the voice of my good friend. I think last year somebody contacted me about having a link with Europe, that they would grow the food in Europe and we'd be able to ship it in. There's nothing to stop us from pursuing even our friends in the Caribbean. They produce foodstuffs that we can ship, and we can probably get them here in fairly short order. So I think looking at different ways to get the food in, and we can do that at a lot lower price and a lot fresher, then that could be a win-win situation. Again, we still have to deal with the distribution costs, and if there's a way that you can reduce those distribution costs, then you would definitely see a drop in the cost of the items. We can also look at, do we substitute or should we substitute the farmers in Bermuda, the ones who are out there doing it now? So instead of going to the grocery store and paying $7 for the local cauliflower, if they were subsidized, could that price come down to $5 or something like that? So I think all of those things you would have to look at. And of course, ultimately, as Christopher Famous was just saying, that you have to look at what you do in the interim in order to control your costs. So for instance, if you came to my house at night, 90% of the lights are solar lights. And you walk down my steps, the solar lights come on. I've got a light that goes outside on a solar panel that's in my kitchen, so that when we go to bed, we put that light on, and that stays on all night. Those are the types of things that we have done in order to help reduce our costs.
Gotcha. And so a quick follow-up question would be, based upon your experience, right, how brand loyal are Bermudians in terms of you mentioned Tesco products, for example. Do you see us, or what would your comment be about us buying different name brand items if they were available at say, I don't know, a can of cream, if it was available at $2 as opposed to $4 or $5? What's your comment about Bermudians being able to make that switch based upon a price reduction and not thinking that the food itself is inferior? And I'll say thank you and listen over here.
Okay, I think that's the biggest challenge right there. I remember going to a discussion, I know it was in Centennial Hall several years back, and this came up about the cost. And one of the panelists said, well, you can buy, I think it was about Hellmann's mayonnaise. And, and the senior said, what are you going to do about the cost? I'm paying, I don't know, $9 for 32 ounces of Hellmann's mayonnaise. And the panelist said, well, you can buy this product over here, and that's one's $5. No, I don't want that one. I want Hellmann's. I want you to reduce the cost. And he said, well, therein lies the problem. And I think therein does lie the problem, that if we are not willing to switch for whatever reason, then we end up paying the higher cost. But if I'm one who's selling Hellmann's mayonnaise and I know that you're going to buy it, I'm not too concerned about the cost going up because you feel that you have to have that product. But in other places, you do have opportunities to buy a different item. So, for instance, if you go to the pharmacy, you can ask for the generic product as opposed to the brand product. It's the same product, it does the same thing, but it's going to cost you less. So I think the mindset, I think that's a good question. Are we prepared, if those items are on the market, to switch to something that's similar, or are we going to stick with the brand name product? I remember years ago when ShopRite products came to Bermuda, they were viewed as the poor man's products. And if you had something with the ShopRite label in your house, you would look down upon because you didn't buy the brand item. Well, ShopRite products have transformed themselves now that they don't even look like ShopRite products. They have a different branding, and it would say a ShopRite brand. So they have come a long way. So you can do that switch, but yes, if you're a brand conscious consumer, then you're going to have a harder time switching.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for the caller that called in. As I was saying earlier, right, is that the price of rice isn't going to go down with us complaining. The price of gas isn't going to go down with us complaining. It's just not. You're not going to pick up the phone and send a TikTok to Putin and say, hey, bro, stop the war so the price could come down, because mayonnaise is too expensive. It comes on to choices, right? Now, I'm not saying we can't choose which electricity we buy. There's only one type of electricity you could buy, right? But you could choose to turn stuff off. So when people give replies like, oh, it's going to cost me money to put that here. So if you spend, I'm just using an analogy, you spend $50 on an item that's going to save you $500, is that not worth your money?
It's an investment.
Right? If you choose to buy generic mayonnaise versus Hellmann's, which is basically the same thing, right? Different label.
Yep.
And you save $5, it's not saving money. Let's be brutally honest with the people and our anger, right? People say, oh, the government, right? But the government is the same people that are employing 5,000 people. Same people that are providing services for others. This happens not just in Bermuda, but everywhere. So the government can't just stop taxes. Else, we ain't gonna have money for nothing, right? Like straight up. That's how things work. So even if the government got out of the way and didn't tax anybody, you still got to pay the shipping cost. You still got to pay the grocery cost. All of these things, and then you're not gonna have the services. And then you're gonna have thousands of people unemployed. So how does that work? So again, this is a topic, expanding the topic on the wider basis of how the economy works is something that we need to do on a consistent basis. But again, Mr. Riley, thank you for educating the people, informing the people, and I'll turn it over to Brother Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you giving us some of your time. And obviously, with that topic, it's two sides, right? So we could go back forward, debate, But at the end of the day, it's good to arm the people with facts, right? So I appreciate you coming on and giving us an expert opinion. And we hope to have you on at a later date.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And yes, I did come prepared to provide facts. So thank you. And your listening audience.
Any closing remarks, Brother Dwayne?
Just be safe, and spend wisely.
All right. With that, close out, Brother Dwayne.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so, before we close, we know that there's cup match coming up. So we are going to try to have 2 cup match captains on the week before cup match to give their side of what cup match is about and the little bit of cricket talk.
Yeah.
So we're looking for that for the 21st, the 28th. We're not going to be here because, hey, that's cup match day.
That's right. I need to be out there watching my team win again.
I got to be in here pressing the buttons to make sure St. George's wins.
No. Come on.
Yeah. If you heard the news, if you heard the radio go silent, you know things are going wrong.
Yeah. You know it's me.
You're right.
All right. Dwayne closes out.
Well, thank you all for listening. And as usual, we will be adjourned until next Thursday.
And you have been listening to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.